I want you to move from overwhelmed by information to confident in what really matters. I want to help you move from being unsure towards direction and purpose in your healthcare. I want to introduce you to health experts. I want to let you in on tough conversations on women's health. I want to give you a place where you can lean in and learn how to take care of yourself. Let's transform your health. Let's get clear on your goals. This is Women's Health Unplugged. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Robertson, naturopathic doctor. I've never hated the word should. I know that conversation floats around often online around how we shouldn't use that word. I can't even say one sentence without using the word should or shouldn't. I've never hated the word, and I totally get and see where that conversation online or in sort of that health and wellness and self-help space comes from, that when we have those feelings or those should statements in our head, often that means that we feel obligatory towards someone or something, that we have guilt and shame around how we do behave, and then we think that we maybe should be behaving in some other way, or that we have these expectations of ourselves or of others, and that word is often sort of joining a sentence together in a way that is pointing out a lack or a deficit that we have in ourselves and this aspirational version of ourselves that we should be instead. However, I don't hate the word at all. And I think when I sat down to think about what I wanted to chat about in today's episode, which is actually going to be one of our last episodes for a little while, we actually are going to take a break for the podcast through the summer here of 2022. And we're doing that for a couple of reasons. I would love an opportunity for us to regroup on some of the content that we want to share with you as an audience member. But also when I was looking at some of the things that I should be doing over the summer, and really what it is that I love about the summer months is it's always been this opportunity for me to reset, to get reprioritized with some of my goals, and to try and make sure that where I am at on my sort of burnout spectrum is appropriate, and that I use the time that's given in the summer, that I take in the summer as an opportunity to rest and recover. The summer for me, I always go back to or think about the time that I really did sort of hit a wall with my burnout, which was about 5 years ago. And I've told this story lots of times before on the podcast, and maybe too in person if we happen to work together. But I hit a total burnout wall at one point, and that culmination of overwork and parenting and exercising and dieting and all the things that were happening at that stage of my life. I, drove my kids to school. My husband was away. I drove my kids to school. I drove home. I got in my bed. I got out of my bed at like 3:20 and drove back to the school to get them. And I remember thinking to myself on that day, it's when my PMS/PMDD was really bad. I remember thinking, okay, I understand how people can die from their mood. And that was a really sort of eye-opening experience for me, because I had never had that level of despair, that level of, the sadness that hurts, essentially. I never had that level of pain from my mood before. And that became this impetus to really change my pace, and also to start to balance out the amount of time that I took off in the summer. So I took an emergency vacation that July, which ended up being about 2 weeks later. And then from that moment on, planned that my summers were going to be very different. And so many of you know I often take a month off work every summer. That started the summer after my burnout experience, because I basically put systems in place so that I could take a full month off every summer. Now, as a self-employed woman, that is not an easy feat. which maybe is a conversation for another day. But it essentially took me 12 months to plan how to take that time off, and now has become part of my regular summer routine is that I work significantly less. Although that said, I am learning that this particular year that sort of that like dichotomy of working a lot and then not working a lot is now no longer working for me. And I did not take enough vacation between December and May, which I definitely sort of felt the effects of. But when I sat down to think about the summer, and I do this every summer as I come up with goals that I want to achieve through the summer with respect to myself and my health, that it really sort of sparked this idea of the way that our summer should go, or the real shoulds of summer. And I do think that these things, if we apply them, can be quite valuable ways for you to start to develop some traction in your health. I notice two things when I'm working with patients through the summer time. One is that we all naturally tend to feel better during the summer. And what that means is that people may approach their health plan differently, with more ease, with more, I'm going to use the word neglect, because there are so many other pieces that feel good when it's, you got the sun on your body and you feel warm and you have some vacation and the days are longer. Everybody else around you is maybe a hair less negative than normal. We generally feel well. And so, one thing I will observe is that patients, because they feel more well, is that they stop doing a lot of the things that they did before in order to help them be well. Now, also, I will admit that sometimes people feel better during the summer, and that's okay that they take a break from some of the things that they do habitually to support their health, because they maybe aren't needed. We don't need to contrast the lack of sunlight and the cold and the inaccessibility to outdoor exercise and all of those things. Maybe you can just legit take a break from your health plan. But that's one thing I notice, is that we just generally feel better in the summer. And the other thing that I notice about the summer working with patients is that it's short. The summer is short, or it's definitely short where I live. And that does a couple of things for people as well. Either they will put their health goals down because they're like, whatever, it's 8 weeks. And then their summer turns into a binge drinking barbecue bender. Or it's short as in people feel like they want to cram in all of the health that they failed to do in the last 10 months in before they get back to regular routine in September. So trying to counter some of those observations that I make in people as I work with them through the summer, or as I work with them like up until June, when everyone's life seems to kind of hit the fan in June. It's actually like our weirdest clinical month of the entire year, with the most rescheduled cancellations. It's like June is a blink of an eye, right? And people don't realize how much other obligations and things they have in June, especially if you have kids. So I wanted this list of summer shoulds to try to counter some of those natural phenomenon that I observe in people going into the summer, and also give you something to root some of your thoughts and goals about the summer in, so that your summer is actually a productive time in your health. This can be such a restorative, beautiful time of year. But I want you to leverage this time into feeling more well as we go into the fall, and actually developing some traction in your health habits, so that when we go into the fall, we're in a pretty good place. It's common when I see people in September that they tell me that I look younger, like I've reversed aged over those 2 months. And every September, I always think, God, I want to keep that like summer vibe with me through the fall. And I'm getting better at it every year. And so part of my sharing today is trying for us to figure some of that out for you. So the 3 summer shoulds, the real summer shoulds that we're going to focus on. So one is that, hate to break it to us, but the entire summer is not vacation mode. And what I mean by that is I often will observe in my patients who are retiring that their first year of retirement just looks like a weekend 24/7. So habits that used to be reserved for Saturday and Sunday start to creep into the rest of the week. And part of it's because they used work as this basically as this reminder of how to behave. And we saw this at the beginning of the pandemic as well, when no one had to go anywhere for a while and people were like drinking wine at 10 o'clock in the morning because they had nowhere to be, right? We get cueing, like external cueing from our environment on what to do next. And we know that successful habits are often built on cueing from our external environment. So if our water bottle is on our desk, we will drink more water than if it's in the closet. And if our running shoes are in our car, we're more likely to stop on the way home from work at the gym. We rely on these cues and the rhythm of our day in order to be able to maintain our health habits. Habits are like our brain craving this opportunity to run on autopilot. And so when things are around us or when our environment is set up well for us, those habits will perform on autopilot. But in the summer, a couple things happen, right? People often have more flexibility in the amount of time that they work, or they take this intentional vacation because the days are longer. Our cues are a little different. We may be up later. We may eat dinner later. We may do things differently because the day is warmer and we can be outside longer. I've definitely experienced that like cottage time vortex where you realize it's like 7:45 p.m. and your kids ate a hot dog like 11 hours ago and no one's eaten anything since. That often is kind of what happens going into these summer months. And because we feel like we're in that summer vibe, vacation mode, people often do things in their health habits or they don't do things because they're in vacation mode. But not every day in the summer is a Saturday. Not every day can be a party with your health. And it's because when we come back to sort of this idea that like your health is built on habits, right? And if you've been listening to the podcast before, you know that I'm not mad about the one cupcake or the one Diet Coke or the one whatever, because that's not what matters. It's if you had a cupcake every single day, then and that maybe wasn't helping you meet your health goal, right? Maybe it is helping you meet your health goal, and then have at her. Quite often, like our behaviors are not reflecting what our goal is, right? Like our daily pattern, we do things in our pattern of behavior, but then we have this goal that we are not achieving. And what we need to do is take a pretty good look at what our day looks like to see if we're actually making it towards our goal. You can't say you want to run a marathon and then never run. And similarly, if you have a health goal that you're kind of holding in your hand as this priority or value for you, we need to look at those daily practices to see how close or far we are from achieving that goal through the repetition of the things that you're doing day in and day out. But if we're going to treat those 8 to 10 weeks of summer as a vacation from all of that, a vacation from your nutrition plan, maybe the foods that you eat or under-eat on are different through when you're on vacation. Maybe the amount of alcohol or the amount of recreational drugs or the amount of other things that you do are more, right? Because on the weekend, on your vacation, and now that's bled into more days than not in the summer. And I've definitely worked with women in the past where I'm making a recommendation or suggestion about how they could align their daily practices with their goal. And they say, but Jordan, barbecues, right? As if like the barbecues are so frequent that the rest of their health plan needs to be parked until September. So if you have a goal, right? If you have a goal that you want to move towards, my suggestion for you, or that summer is that we shouldn't, or maybe it's a shouldn't, not a should. We should treat the days in the summer like regular days with sprinkled vacation, right? And when I'm saying vacation, I don't mean work. I mean vacation from the path that you're on, or the plan that you're on, or your habits, or the things that have like made you the woman you are right now, putting them down for 10 weeks is not progress. And I know that's actually, interestingly, is like counter to a lot of the messaging that I'll share. I want women to feel compassionate towards themselves and not push themselves too hard, and to have empathy and have appropriate pacing. But you all want to get somewhere. I mean, you're listening to a freaking health podcast in your leisure time. You have a goal. And so whatever that goal is, my recommendation to you is that you should create space for it in your summer life. One of the things I noticed when we became more full-time cottagers, my husband and I, this was something that was a huge value to us. And we ended up getting a cottage when we were quite young. And we did this because this was a super priority. Like when, instead of, renovating our basement in our house, we decided to get a cottage, and our house was like 600 square feet. And so we were those people that were like, we need a place that we can go in the woods. And we cared about that more than we cared about the place that we lived in the city. But when we became these like full-time cottagers and we ended up spending so much time up there, we realized really quickly that we couldn't treat every day that we had at the cottage like it was a vacation, because now we were there too much, right? We were there so many days and so many weekends that if we behaved like we did when we were there really sparingly, right? Like we would go up and it was like our one weekend in the month, and we would, at that time, I would binge drink and eat whatever and stay up till 3 a.m. and just do stupid stuff for me. But it was because it was like this really infrequent experience. And so it was like a heyday. Fast forward, if you're going to be there, 15 out of 30 days in a month, you can't act that way and still achieve your health goals. And so there had to be this huge reframe where our grocery shopping needed to look way more similarly to our winter grocery shopping so that we set ourselves up for success. We needed to limit our alcohol intake, which this was back before I was sober. We needed to limit our alcohol intake to reflect what it would look like in a normal work week rather than being on vacation all the time. So that kind of should statement is that your summer should look a little bit like your health habits did in the winter, so that we're not putting them down for an 8 to 10 week period of time. Again, I'm not mad about one cupcake. 8 weeks is a lot of cupcakes. It's a lot of staying up late. That's a lot of alcohol. That's a lot of not doing your going to the gym, right? That's a lot of those things. And so it's enough time that you could make or break your path towards what your goals are by either doing or not doing things. It's just too long. And so I want your summer to look like regular life with celebration sprinkled in there. And also like brings up that whole idea, like how we celebrate, right? And we certainly don't always have to celebrate by having a beer and a cupcake. We could celebrate in other ways. We could celebrate the presence of each other in other ways. And so I want you to reflect on that. Like, how many of your summer days are just looking like healthy days versus are we leaning towards more days than not being this pattern of like vacation mode just because it happens to be warm outside. So that's number one. Number two is, I think that summer is this great opportunity to develop your habits into your identity. So I've always loved that writing on habit formation. I really love that book, Atomic Habits. I think there's some real gems in there for how to practically move like your habit trying to identity. So the example that they give in that book, which I adore, says something to the effect of like, if someone told you that they were trying to quit smoking, would you believe them? Right? Say like, yeah, I'm trying to quit smoking. You'd be like, oh, good luck. It's not likely. And I'm sure next time I see you, you'll still be a smoker. And then think about how many of your habits you are using that same language for. I'm trying to walk more. I'm trying to get to bed earlier. I'm trying to eat more vegetables. right? These are things that I hear over and over again in patient appointments. People are trying to do lots of things. But if we looked at our smoking friend here and they said they're trying to quit smoking, immediately we would not believe them, right? We'd be like, ooh, there's a lot of barriers for you to overcome there. For you to go from a smoker to a non-smoker, like good luck with your trying. And yet the principles are actually quite similar, is that when we're trying to do something, we're admitting to ourselves that it is not this like integral part of our value system or integral part of our identity. It's a thing that we're basically trying on, right? It's like I'm trying this sweater in the change room. That's the same as you saying that you're trying to eat more vegetables. You're trying it on for a second. And if it doesn't fit, right? If it doesn't fit in your life, in your day, I can do anything with a metaphor, I swear to God, then you're not likely to continue to keep it, right? And so one of the things that I think can be so great in the summer when you've got this like newfound energy, when the days are longer, when things feel easy, when you don't have to scrape your car, if you're going to go somewhere, if you live in Southern Ontario like I do, it is an opportunity to try on a new identity rather than trying a habit. So where that conversation in the habit literature goes is like, if you identify as a person who eats lots of vegetables, you will, right? And more often than not, you'll be successful. And rather than you trying the habit on occasionally, you are embodying what it is for someone who finds value in eating more vegetables or who identifies as a person who eats vegetables, right? If you thought about a person who identified as eating vegetables, what would you think about them, right? They'd spend a lot of time looking at vegetables in the grocery store. They may even go to a farmer's market. They actually might sign up for a farm share, given that it's the summer and these things are plentiful and abundant in the summer. They may cook with vegetables at every meal. They may find weird ways to squeeze vegetables into meals that don't normally have vegetables, right? If that person like embodies or identifies as a person who eats vegetables, and I can think of a few of my really close friends who are people who eat vegetables, I like even their Instagram shows that they're eating vegetables, right? Like they are embodying it. And summer is this opportunity for you to not just try habits, but for you to change your identity as it pertains to those habits. You can be a walker in the summer. It's way easier to be a person who walks in the summer versus when we say we're going to try walking in November, we're very much just trying to be a walker. And then if it gets too icy, we're not ready to, right? Like we won't go. Whereas in the summer, you have this opportunity to try habits, to incorporate habits into your identity. Right? So thinking about what it is that you wish you were being more successful at, and just be that person. And the summer, because you feel better and because the days are longer and it's warmer and you've got maybe a little bit more time off, rather than being a person who's trying to walk, you can become a walker. And what that does for you in this sort of window of time is if we can start to identify with our habits versus trying our habits, is that by the time an obstacle rolls around, like snow, right? If you identify as a person who walks and it snows, what do? You walk. You maybe buy some spikes, or you get better boots, or you figure out if there's an indoor track near your house, right? There are things that you would do. If you are a walker and something gets in your way, you figure out how to walk. And the summer is this opportunity for you to rinse and repeat those habits long enough that you start to incorporate it into your identity. You would actually have the ability to practice those habits, whatever they are, with such high frequency that they become part of your identity. And so when I look at those shoulds, for me, last summer, one of my shoulds was I should be reading more fiction. And this actually lends into what number 3 is for us here. I should be reading more fiction. And so I intentionally booked time in my calendar to read fiction. I prioritized it. I burned through books last summer, which I haven't read books like with any kind of consistency since my son was born. And when I figured out how to breastfeed and read with one hand, and this was like a little bit pre-social media, so I actually didn't have Facebook at the time. There was nothing, in my mind, there was nothing else to do, right? By the time I had my daughter, I had social media 2 years later, and then that's what I did when I breastfed, but I'm totally getting off track. You have this opportunity to practice those habits enough, create space for them enough that by the time the fall rolled around, even when my other work started to creep in, I read more than I did in the past. Now, I'm not burning through books like I was last summer, and I need to a total regroup on that going into this summer. But it was still more. I still identified as a person who bought a lot of books. I started following people who had great book lists. Now when I go into Indigo, even though I haven't been reading that well, I love that I can look at each of those tables of like bestsellers and then the monthly theme. And I've read at least one book off of each of those tables. And I like identify as one of those people who've read those books, right? I got there by practicing it in the summer. And so if you've got opportunity and if you have a goal that you want to move towards or achieve, the summer is this cool spot where you can actually start to move your trying of your habits into an identity so that when your regular routine like rolls back into your life in the fall, that hopefully those things are ingrained enough in you that you see opportunity for how to overcome obstacles and you maintain those habits. That's really where we want to get with the habit thing, is it needs to be your identity. I identify as someone who reads. Even if I'm not reading right now, I still identify as a person who reads now. Whereas at the beginning of last summer, I was not a reader. My last should statement is that we really should be overhauling how we feel and think about our leisure time. And this one, I think, when I was thinking about, why do I have more time in the summer? Why do we have more time in the summer? Where is that time in the winter? And I start always by thinking about myself, like where is the reading time in the winter? Like it's not just because I take more vacation in the summer that I have time to read. Like there are lots of days of the week. Why is there no reading happening on those days? And I think when we're in that sort of the grind and in survival mode, the things that we're willing to fill our dead time with are just so unproductive, right? So when I think about if I had 45 minutes to kill in between kid activities or while I was waiting for an appointment or, it's a little bit too early to go to bed and so I'm just going to wait, that in the winter, what has crept into that leisure time for me are things that are not filling my soul. They're not expanding who I am as a person. Quite often they are things like social media and just this like mindless numbing experience of the day rather than feeling enriched by my leisure activities. And so one of the things that I think we should really do this summer is think about where and how we're spending all of those sort of minutes in between things. Like if I was at the cottage and I had 45 minutes to kill, I'd pick up a book, right? I would never like sit down in the sun and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to scroll Instagram. That would never come up as something that I would love to do. But when it's dark and cold and gross and I feel like I'm trying to escape the situation, then way more than 45 minutes can go by while I'm scrolling, and it's the same amount of time. And so I want the leisure time that we have this summer to be enriching us. I want it to be moving us forward as people. I don't want leisure time isn't like an activity that we should be like intentionally choosing to do versus it being a numbing, time-passing experience or opportunity. And so when I was on my trip recently, I went away with a group of women women entrepreneurs, and someone asked me if I was a reader. Keep going back to the reading. And I said, I have to read like I meditate, right? The thought never strikes me like that I should meditate. I have to make a conscious decision. I don't crave meditating, just like I don't really crave reading either. They are both incredibly good for me, right? But if I let the default of that numbing, seeking kind of zone out behavior dominate, I will never circle around to those activities. It's kind of like eating vegetables. Like people say, well, I never crave eating vegetables. Like no one does. It's fine. That is an adulting decision that we need to make to eat more vegetables. I would like to argue that I think that our summer leisure time needs to be an adulting activity where you are intentionally choosing a thing to do to heal yourself from your day rather than it being this mind numbing waste of time, not really doing a whole heck of a lot for humanity, a kind of activities like scrolling. Now, this is like from one scroller to another. I totally recognize that there are those moments where you've been overtouched by your kids and over DM'd by your colleagues, and like it's just too much. Your day's too much, and we crave an activity that we can sit and just block out the day and numb and scroll. And I totally get that, right? Like I do not judge. I am that mom that will scroll while I'm at the park with my kids because I just need a minute or 50 to myself. I'm not judging that, and that's not how I want you to feel about what I'm saying there. What I'm saying is that we have goals. You have goals. And when I think about the should statements of the summer, just sort of circle back on all of them, you have this brilliant opportunity over the next 8, 10, 12 weeks, depending on how long your summer experience kind of is or feels, to give yourself the gift of working on the goals of who you want to be. So if you have health goals, don't treat the next 8 weeks like you're on a vacation, right? Treat them like life and let vacation and celebration and those things be the exception to the rule, but let the rule be that you're taking care of yourself and that it's not this like 8-week bender, because when September rolls around, you're going to feel like you've got this mountain built up in front of you when you have this great opportunity to just continue with so many of your health habits. I also want you to convert some of those habits into your identity. I think we should be focusing on how to identify and embody the things that we're moving towards versus feeling like we're trying them on like a sweater. And I also think we should be choosing our leisure time with the same level of intent that we choose so many other things in our day, right? I choose to do my work. I should choose what I do not in my work time. I should choose to read and choose to meditate and choose to go to bed early. Instead of letting those things happen to me, letting those hours fly by without intentionally picking something that's actually moving me forward based on what my actual goals are. So at the beginning of the summer, I do this activity, and this is what I'm going to leave you with, is I write down my goals. I write down my work goals. I write down my personal goals, meaning like my mindset and personal evolution goals, basically, which I achieve a lot of those things through my therapy. But just I set that goal and intention, partly because it's also easy to like cancel your therapy appointments in the summer or cancel all your healthcare appointments in the summer. But when I set that intention, then I know that I'm going to keep those appointments with myself and for myself. One is my work goals, one is my personal goals, and then I also write exercise goals for the summer. And I do that so that I can take advantage of the variety of exercise that's actually available to me. I can use my exercise time as leisure time, meaning that I'm intentionally choosing outdoor exercise wherever possible to connect with nature. And that's what I do. I start at the beginning of every summer and I write down these goals. Now, sometimes the goals look like walk the road every day I'm at the cottage, get 10,000 steps, or something very specific. And sometimes those goals are around like finding opportunities for movement when you maybe otherwise wouldn't. And so whatever makes sense to you, whatever feels like in alignment with where you're at around your health and what you need to focus on or want to focus on throughout the summer, that's how you're going to frame or set those goals. Sometimes I need to be super black and white with my goals so that I don't let my emotions decide if I'm going to follow through with it or not on any particular day. And sometimes I need the goal to feel more flexible so that I feel like I can actually stay committed and connected to it, because I just, like the next person, I can be a little black and white. And if I fail on one day, then it's hard to pick yourself back up the following day. But that's how I start every summer, is I write this big, long journal entry about all the things I want to accomplish. And really, like, it comes back to these should statements around, like, I should be trying to turn these habits into my identity. I should be treating these days as if they're opportunities to move forward on my health plan and not just a vacation. And I should be making intentional choices around my leisure time rather than letting the time pass me by, because our summers feel so short where we live and we want to seize every opportunity. The more that I practice that during these days that feel indefinitely long, the more likely it is that I'm going to be able to embody all of these changes when September rolls around. I hope you have a great summer. I look forward to connecting with you in the fall when we resume our episode releases for the podcast. You're welcome to reach out to us on social media and get connected through this summer. And make sure that you stay, connected to us through whether it's email, whether it's through social media, and by following along so that you're ready when we start to release this next season of podcasts come the fall. Enjoy your time off. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Women's Health Unplugged. My goal is to help you feel more confident about your health. Please remember that what we talked about today in the podcast does not constitute medical advice, nor was a doctor-patient relationship formed. If you have questions about your healthcare or about how today's topic pertains to you, please take it up with your family doctor, your specialist, or someone on your health team.